Pete Hegseth today addressed senior military leaders at Quantico in Virginia. He outlined his vision for a new direction for the department, highlighting 10 new directives, including new standards for combat arms positions, regular PT tests, and changes to their grooming standards. Here's what he said during his remarks. There is some graphic language here.
Would you want him serving with fat or unfit or undertrained troops? Or alongside people who can't meet basic standards? Or in a unit where standards were lowered so certain types of troops could make it in? In a unit where leaders were promoted for reasons other than merit, performance, and warfighting? The answer is not just no, it's hell no.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to make a point with his troops and trying to, and I've seen this. I'll digress a little bit with law enforcement, where you have these standards you have to meet, but then you get to the point where you're a captain or lieutenant or chief. Do you really need the standards? Well, according to some departments, you sort of do. But on the other hand, if you, I don't know, I can understand you're military, you're wearing the uniform, police, military, whatever. You need to look the part. But having those kind of standards for people that have been around for a while and that have earned their stripes maybe doesn't make the most sense in the world. But President Trump actually addressed the group as well.
We're bringing back a focus on fitness, ability, character, and strength. And that's because the purposes of American military is not to protect anyone's feelings. It's to protect our republic.
We are joined this morning by NewsNation's White House correspondent, Kellie Meyer. Kellie, thank you for joining us this morning. And what can you tell our listeners about these new directives?
Yeah, hi. I think that this is something that Secretary Hegseth has been weighing for a while now. He's been talking a lot about this, quote, warrior ethos. And I think this is something that he laid out today now with this 10-point plan that they're calling it. It's going to be what we got and obtained by NewsNation, this 20-page memo, 10 different points, really laying out now specifically what this means for the branches. So whether it comes to no beards for service members, whether it comes to raising the standards, and this is something he's talked about, to this, quote, male standard. So he says if the women are able to reach that, excellent. If they're not, it is what it is how he put it today. So really laying this out in detail. This is something that the president says he supports. And his speech, the president's speech, was a bit more winding on various issues, not just the military, but certainly Secretary Hegseth, now what they're calling the Secretary of War, as the president pushed to rename the Defense Department the War Department. They're focusing on this, quote, warrior mentality and trying to really just increase the physical fitness of the branches, as well as the overall, the different requirements for different aspects as well.
So, Kellie, over the weekend, we were watching as the story kind of developed about this call for the brass to, come and gather for this meeting, and there was not a lot of indication what it was all going to be about and speculation. Does any of this, to you, come as a surprise, or is this kind of what we were expecting to see happen here?
I think some of it was not a surprise, and then at the same time, some of it was. I think some of the comments that he had to make about this, and certainly laying this out more explicitly. But at the same time, this has to go through a lot of bureaucracy within the Pentagon. So he could lay this all out, but then we don't know if it's going to be something that will really happen. And that's what we're hearing more from Democrats, for example, that my colleagues have been speaking with on Capitol Hill, is that this may just be, as they're calling it, just for show, just for TV. This is something that won't really be able to go into effect. Some of these are just ideas, but there are some things that the administration has been talking about for a while and could potentially put into play.
Kellie, could you get any reading from the audience themselves as to how this was being received? Because there were a lot of stars and bars there. There were a lot of senior military officials and people who aren't used to being given orders. How did you think that they were perceiving this?
I think in terms of those in the audience that were listening in and kind of taking this all in, I think the president even commented as he walked out how silent it was, and that was the most silent room he's walked into. He's not used to that when he goes and speaks in front of people. But this was obviously a very different audience, and it seemed as though one that he wasn't exactly comfortable speaking in front of, how he kind of went on with his speech for quite a while. both on script, but then not on teleprompter, and wavering off. But it seems as though what we were seeing from those or hearing from those reporters that were in the audience, that some were taking notes, some were kind of gazing off and kind of rolling their heads. But overall, even the president said before he left for this event that if he doesn't like what certain top generals have to say, top military leaders, he'll say you're fired, and gave examples of what he's done in the past to previous military leaders.
I mean, I can imagine that chain of command is a thing. This is the commander-in-chief and the head of the department, and they're laying out a vision, and you were called in. So maybe an argument that sitting quietly and respectfully is appropriate. It's not a rally. It's not a political rally, right?
Exactly. Like that is the demeanor. That's how they are trained. That is what the audience is going to be. And I don't know if the president was just poking fun at that when he came out, that this is just a quiet audience. But obviously they're going to be respectful and obtain their training when they are in that environment. And it was a very quick gathering, a very quick get-together of these top generals and admirals. There was even the question to the president of the cost factor of getting everybody here at last minute. This was a last-minute kind of speech, and that's why there were some Democrats criticizing it as more of a made-for-TV moment rather than something substantial, whereas those leaders from Hegseth to Trump argue that this is something that is going to take effect.
What do you suppose Trump's overall objective was in speaking? What was his message? We understand Hegseth. He laid out this 10-point plan. Was Trump seemingly on board with that, or did he have his own message?
Yeah, Trump, he did offer his support. He did talk about, of course, how he's, used the military in certain cities. He's talked about how he uses them to maintain, as he's calling, law and order in certain cities, sending the National Guard. He said something like, encouraging them to use force if necessary. If they spit, we hit, is how he put it, for example. So he did talk a bit about that aspect of how he's trying to keep communities or make sure that communities are safe with this effort. But that obviously has come under a lot of questions and criticism and controversy of his usage of the military for things like this.
Definitely, the optics of the thing to me are just very interesting, Kellie, because as we've talked about here, you are calling all of these very experienced soldiers, admirals, generals, people to come and listen to this message. And for me, as just I've never served in the military, and I'm thinking to myself, well, is this just one of those that could have been in an email kind of things? Could you send out that 10-point plan and just say this is the direction that we're going with the department? But clearly the goal here was to get face-to-face with these leaders.
Yeah, make it a big moment. They really hyped it up. They really said they're going to do this, last-minute, massive gathering, rare gathering of military leaders from around the world and bring them in. There were comments on X, could this have been an email? But this is something that they did want to make sure they put out there. So that was interesting to see, too.
Kellie, we've got about a minute left, but it seemed like one of the directives was sort of get on board politically. I'm wondering what that might mean.
Yeah, I think there was that push in the sense of to have him come in, and we see that really kind of, the conflict there between both, you have the service members, but then you have the political aspect of it as well. You see that when you were at the Pentagon, the conflict of interest between, you have obviously you're leading for the administration, you have politicians in service, but then you have career service members, you have people that have served in combat that aren't really tied into the politics of it all. So it is interesting to see the political message there when really they are just given the mission and have to serve it out. So you see that kind of play out, especially in a moment like this.
Thanks, Kellie. That was NewsNation's White House correspondent Kellie Meyer talking to us about Secretary of Defense, I'll call him, Pete Hegseth.
He wants to be called Secretary of War.
Plan with his military leaders today. He was rah-rah. He was up there doing it and trying to get the troops organized.